There's an old medieval tale, the Life of Merlin of the Forest, that tells of a wild man of the woods who had been banished to the wilderness because of a great battle he had provoked and the terrible slaughter that had followed. Near the village of Drumelzier in the Scottish borders is the reputed site of his grave, where he was buried after suffering the threefold death, clubbed, impaled and drowned, that he had foretold to St Kentigern and a so-called under-king called Mildred. Archaeologists have speculated that the tradition may have originated from the discovery of a Bronze Age grave, but though it has been marked in maps since the 18th century, and the story itself preserved in an early 15th century manuscript, nothing has ever been recorded at this spot. There are hints that Drumelzier's Merlin legend is much older than this, not least the name of its protagonist, Lailoken. The name Merlin was in fact invented in the 12th century by Geoffrey of Monmouth, when he collected different Welsh stories about Merlin of the Woods, and drew these together into Arthurian legends. The Drumelzier story, however, paints a much darker picture than the Arthurian legend. Not of an exalted wise mentor to a legendary king, but a pitiful wretch held bound by an otherwise unknown petty tyrant for want of a new prophecy. Many aspects of the Drumelzier story are similar to these early medieval Welsh stories. The name Lailoken itself derives from the ancient Welsh language spoken in southern Scotland during the early medieval period, still preserved for instance in several place names across Peeblesshire. Lailoken's gift of prophecy seems related to the skills of divining the future attributed to druids by ancient classical writers, and Lailoken's triple death reflects the overkill observed amongst many Iron Age sacrificial bog bodies. Which kind of begs the question, was this tale simply brought here by a wandering medieval minstrel who placed it at various random sites in the vicinity, or did the Merlin legend first start in Drumelzier itself before travelling to Wales and beyond? Well, in 2022, a team of volunteers and archaeologists set about trying to answer these questions by undertaking a geophysics survey of the ground around the reputed location of Merlin's grave. Magnetic surveying is a method of seeing what is buried beneath the surface by detecting fired or magnetically enhanced features, such as pits, graves, ditches, kilns and hearths. While the geophysics survey found no evidence of anything at the spot marked in maps as the site of Merlin's grave, here marked by the red circle, a large pit was detected a short distance to the southeast. Only excavation may determine if this is indeed a grave and what period it belongs to. The geophysics evidence suggests that some form of archaeological remains lies buried here. Fortunately, this wasn't the only site the team could investigate. But before we get to that, let's consider Drumelzier's Merlin legend. This medieval tale includes a real person, St Kentigern, the 6th century Bishop of Glasgow, whose death was recorded in the Welsh annals as around the year AD 614. The terrible slaughter in the story was the Battle of Arthuret, recorded in the Welsh annals as taking place in AD 573. Much of the story takes place in and around Dunmellar, which was what Drumelzier was once called. The ruins of Tinnis Castle, up there overlooking Drumelzier, is often thought to be Mildred's lofty throne, beside which he held Lailoken captive awaiting his prophecies. Nowhere else is Mildred recorded, but he is described in the tale as an under-king, suggesting that he ruled a small area under the dominance of a high king. What the Drumelzier story therefore offers is a period, the late 6th and early 7th centuries AD, a place, Drumelzier, and a context, an early medieval kingdom in Peeblesshire, to investigate. The excavation team discovered that beneath the castle lay the remains of an earlier fort. The castle's bailey had been built upon the foundations of a thick dry stone rampart. Charcoal from within this earlier rampart, and elsewhere on the summit, was radiocarbon dated and revealed that the hill fort that underlies Tinnis Castle was indeed occupied at exactly the time when Drumelzier's Merlin legend was set, and continued to be occupied until the early 11th century. Given how many hill forts there are in this neck of the woods, almost all of which are Iron Age, what are the chances that this is just a coincidence? The layout of this early medieval fort, an upper citadel and lower precincts, is similar to other royal strongholds across Scotland from this period. Archaeologists call these nucleated forts, and have found that only very powerful households in Scotland lived in such strongholds during the early medieval period. And the team also found evidence for iron smelting and lead working within the fort. This is significant because in an age when there were no coins, wealth was measured by what could be grown and raised, like grain, cattle and sheep, and what could be made, like clothes, weapons, tools and jewellery, and power rested upon the ability to choose whom to bestow these to. What's more, Tinnis Fort lay within a cluster of other early medieval nucleated forts in early Christian sites in Peeblesshire that looks very similar to the archaeological evidence for other kingdoms elsewhere in early medieval Scotland, like in Galloway, Argyll, Aberdeenshire and Perthshire. The name of this small kingdom in Peeblesshire is unknown, with archaeological evidence revealed at Tinnis is consistent with a prominent household of a local ruler at exactly the same time and place as Drumelzier's Merlin legend is set. What the findings reveal is not that the local story was true, but the Drumelzier legend, which contains pre-Christian customs and ancient names, was associated with local sites that could credibly have given rise to the story. The Merlin legend was not brought here as a wandering medieval tale, but more likely originated in Drumelzier itself, perhaps first as a folk memory, embellished over the centuries, before it spread far and wide and changed out of almost all recognition.